Hi, and welcome to Tranquil Talks with Chris. This is your space to slow down and catch your breath from the noise and the chaos of work and life. A space where you can take the time that you need to think things through clearly. And a space where I hope that you'll feel supported to take just one small intentional step forward in how you communicate and how you lead. I'm your host, Chris, and I'm so glad to be here with you. If you have ever felt like you are the only thing holding your team's communication together, this episode is just for you. I've worked with a lot of hybrid teams over the years, and the ones that struggle most with communication have shared this one thing. There's one kind of conversation they've never actually had, and it is the conversation where a team comes together to talk through, to work through how they actually want to work together. It sounds so simple, so obvious, right? And yet most teams never have this conversation. And they'll spend years feeling the cost of that without ever quite knowing why. I want to share a story with you. Towards the end of my corporate HR career, I facilitated a team workshop for a finance group. This was a strong team, good relationships, technically excellent. On paper, they were doing just fine. Coming into the session, they all seemed quite open and receptive because they genuinely liked each other. There wasn't obvious conflict or dysfunction that needed to be solved. And what happened over our 2 hours together was absolutely incredible to witness. That workshop was all about working through their communication norms together. So we took really deep dives on how they wanted to share information, how they wanted to raise concerns, what they needed from each other to do their best work, things like that. And as we worked through those norms, something shifted. You could feel it and you could see it. Initially, as we took a deep dive on the norms, I noticed that people were getting quiet, or the energy began to lull. The words that they were using that seemed so free flowing, and the banter was freely flowing, they then became much more careful initially, and then over that workshop, they got much more honest with each other. It became more real. I watched this team give each other permission to speak more frankly than they ever had before. And this wasn't because they hadn't trusted each other. There was trust there, but no one had ever created the space for this kind of conversation. No one had ever said, this is a safe place to say what's actually true for you, what is actually on your mind. It was incredible. And it turns out that surface good is very different from being deeply safe with each other. And once the team experiences that difference from surface or superficial good to something deeply safe, wow, that is where everything begins to change. And for me, that experience became one of the seeds of what I now use in my business, what I built in my business called the Team Trust Blueprint. This is a structured co-creation process that helps hybrid teams build their communication culture intentionally rather than just, leaving it to assumptions and just things going the way they go kind of, by chance, as opposed to intention. And I want to be clear about something. The blueprint that I'm referring to, this isn't a static document. It's not a policy. It's definitely not a handbook that your HR team writes and distributes. It is all about being a conversation that your team has together. It's a conversation that covers the things hybrid teams almost never make explicit. Things like how you communicate across channels, being hybrid, how decisions get made, how you protect each other's energy, how feedback and feed forward flows, how trust gets built across distance. My Team Trust Blueprint is grounded in my plant framework. And if you've been with me through my limited series here, you'll recognize the plant framework by name and the 5 pillars that we walked through. The pillars being presence and awareness, listening for what's not said, alignment through communication, nurturing trust, and transformation through feedback and feed forward. The framework gets things started. The blueprint is where those pillars stop being concepts and become agreements, become your team's agreements, built by your team together in your words for your specific context. And why that matters so much is because when people co-create the norms that they're going to work by, they're going to live and work by, rather than having those norms just handed to them, something fundamentally different happens. These team members start to feel ownership. They feel seen. They feel like their voice was part of building something. And of course, for hybrid teams especially, where so much of the connection can get more disrupted, more disconnected, where remote team members are feeling invisible or less visible than their in-office team members, where in-office team members are feeling disconnected in their own way. Where that is the natural reality, that experience of we built this together is quite often the first moment of genuine belonging the team has had. That ain't no small thing. That is the absolute foundation everything else is built on. The blueprint helps to create a few things that most hybrid teams are absolutely starving for. Number 1, the blueprint helps to create explicit agreements. Most hybrid teams that I've supported, that I've been partnering with now as a solo entrepreneur, they operate on unspoken assumptions more often than not. It's the unspoken rules or assumptions about availability, response times, how decisions get made. The Team Trust Blueprint brings those assumptions into the open, and it turns them into shared commitments. Not rules, agreements. And that's a difference that people will feel. The blueprint also creates equal voice. One of the most common and most costly dynamics in hybrid teams is that remote voices get less weight than in-office voices. It may not be intentional, and it may not be something that's meant to be malicious. It just happens. The blueprint process is built to ensure that every voice, regardless of where someone sits, has equal presence in shaping how the team works together. And the blueprint creates a living culture. It's not meant to be a one-time exercise. It's actually meant to be revisited quarterly. Because your team evolves, your hybrid model shifts, your agreements need to grow with you. And I can tell you that quarterly rhythm alone does more for sustained psychological safety than most culture initiatives I've ever seen. So as we get ready to wrap up together today, I want to offer you one reflection, one little experiment for you to try for this week or next week, whenever you feel ready. And here it is. Think about your team and ask yourself one question. If I asked each person on my team right now what our communication norms are, would they all give me the same answer? Not what you hope they'd say, what they'd actually say. And if the answers vary, and for most hybrid teams they will, that's not a failure. That is information. And that is the gap the blueprint is designed to help close. As you sit with that question, as you experiment with trying this out, know that you don't have to fix everything all at once. You just need to see things more clearly, because clarity is always where a healthier communication culture begins. This conversation, the one that I started the episode with, the one that this episode is built around, the conversation that most teams aren't having or has never had, it's not a hard conversation, but it's one that requires someone to say, let's make the invisible visible. Let's build this together, how we work together. Let's do it all together. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. And until next time, take good care of yourself and know that here at Tranquil Talks with Chris, you are always welcome here. You belong. Cheers.